Hello, I wanted to record a quick video because I keep getting very similar questions from researchers. The main question being, how can I use AI more in my research process without just completely losing my mind? So I am here to help answer that question. So when it comes to my answer, there are two main ways that I think about using AI in the research process. The first one is offloading kind of mundane, tedious tasks. And the second one is trying to use AI to democratize slash coach slash give guardrails to people who want to do research but aren't necessarily experts in it. So I'm going to walk you through today how I do that. And the main thing that I want to highlight is creating agents when it comes to utilizing AI with research, because agents will help you get at something very specific. And what agents will also help you do is make sure that we're not having garbage in, garbage out kind of syndrome that can come from utilizing AI, especially when we're trying to teach people or put guardrails around others who aren't as familiar with research. So the first disclaimer that I want to say here is it's very important when you use AI to know what good looks like. So I'm going to showcase the difference between just putting a prompt into ChatGPT, just open prompt, like no agent, and the difference when I put it into an agent that I've created on ChatGPT that is very specifically for user research plans. But the thing is I know what a good user research plan looks like because I've written thousands of them unassisted by AI, just straight from my brain. So I know what good looks like. If you are unsure what good looks like, it's really hard to see what bad is. And so that's why these agents, setting them up as researchers to help ourselves with some tedious tasks like making research plans when we know we're good at it, we know what good looks like. That's why it's very important for that, but also for democratization. So maybe somebody who wants to put together a research plan who doesn't know 100% what good looks like, this is a really great way to help coach them into that. So let's dive in really quickly because I'm trying not to make this, a cinematic hour-long video. So I actually, did not do that. I messed up my copy and paste. So let's say we just put in here, I'm gonna make it kind of bad, but let's be realistic. I want a user research testing plan. That helps me validate, horrible word, but one that's used a lot, the value and pricing of my new monthly book subscription box. Bada bing, bada boom. So here we thought for less than 10 seconds, and here we have our user research plan, right? For our monthly book subscription box. So imagine you can sign up to my book subscription box and say what kind of genre book that you want, and I send you one every month. Sounds kind of cool, actually. So let's validate that. So here we have research objectives. So validating the perceived value. The secondary is willingness to pay. Target audience here. Wow, we have a lot of all genders, quite an income spread, quite a big location, quite a big age range, and we have passionate readers. So we also have here qual methods, focus groups. Wow, focus groups, how fun, and some pricing research and A/B testing. We have a key research questions. What types of books do you enjoy reading? How much would you expect to pay? How do you perceive the idea of receiving books you didn't personally choose? So we have a lot here where the AI has assumed a lot. So I didn't tell them anything about what this actually looks like, where it uses words like validate, doesn't ask any sort of questions about what I'm trying to achieve, doesn't really have any user-based goals. It just really goes off of, okay, hey, that sounds great. Let's gather some valuable insights. These are not going to be valuable insights because one, the demographics are horrendous. Two, focus groups are horrible. Three, we can't really ask people about this. There's nothing about like pain points or unmet needs or anything like that. It's just pretty much saying like taking the solution and asking what would make a book subscription box most valuable to you, which just absolutely defeats the purpose of any sort of discovery research. So, but to be fair, this is something that somebody might put in the prompt. So let's head over to our user research plan guy over here. And let's put this in. Let's test my GPT. So this is my agent that I've built around user research plans. Now it's thinking a bit more. I think that that's totally fake. It's reading some documents, which I'll talk about in just a second. And look at this. Before drafting a testing plan, I need a bit of an intake so I don't actually test the business question instead of the user problem. So we're already off to a better start. So now what this GPT will do is it will force me to answer questions. I mean, granted, that's a lot of questions and probably quite overwhelming for a stakeholder. So you could change the instructions. This isn't overwhelming for me because, again, I would hopefully be answering all of these in my original prompt. But we have things like business problems, user problems, and we've separated those two things. Why are we doing this research? What's the actual concept? Any sort of like hypotheses, maybe talking about who the target customers are rather than somebody, the other one, telling you. So this at least prompts us with trying to understand the problem a little bit better and separating the business and the user problem. It also talks through things like in qualitative research, how much would you pay tends to produce weak data, and how like bad future based questions are. So past spending trade-offs, decision moments. So it doesn't necessarily say, we should focus on, which is somewhat important here, we should focus on pain points and unmet needs in current situations, which I would hope it would have done, but it's okay that it hasn't, because that is something then I would train it to do. So what does this actually look like? As you see here, I have the innards of a agent. And what I find most important is very clear instructions. So I follow a framework of instructions that are about identity and goal, navigation rules, flow and personality, how you should help the user. So this would be something like if a stakeholder were to use this and they would feel way too overwhelmed, I would say, don't ask so many questions at once, but you can tell them what to ask. You could also put in here, that it's more important to have to think through unmet needs and pain points when it comes to discovery, for instance. And then you can tell it a little bit more about like the steps the workflow that it has. So start with intake, help the person refine these things, build the research plan, here's what's in it, give a rationale for each section, invite revision. And these are just signals and adaption and end instructions. So it's really, really important to kind of like think through those instructions, especially if you're using this as like a democratization training tool, which I do highly recommend. The second thing is knowledge. So I actually don't have that many knowledge docs in here because I know what a research plan looks like. So I would actually recommend putting more like 10, 15 knowledge docs in here. And what I have put in are articles that I've written on how to write a research plan because I trust myself in my writing. Another thing that you can put in here are previous research plans that have been written that are really, really good, that are not AI assisted. So research plans that you have written yourself or that your team has written, put those in here as well, because they will help the GPT understand what good looks like. So essentially these knowledge docs are to help with the instructions, because the instructions, I think you only get like, I can't remember how many characters you get to have. Let's see. Hello? No, but I know that I've been cut off before. So it's quite important to include knowledge docs that will help you with defining what good looks like and giving examples, because you want to give this this agent as much context as possible. So any sort of articles that you trust, but please like go over them and make sure that they are not like vague or they don't have like information that you don't believe in, as well as any sort of research plans that really stand out to you. Now, this is research plans for both usability, so evaluative and generative research. What I would recommend doing is probably splitting them further, again, because I don't use this that much, but like because I kind of know how to prompt it in that way, I don't have that, but you could split them out further. And then finally, take off web search. So this makes it kind of just so that it's just for the knowledge documents and instructions that you have put in here, which is great. So it's not going to pull stuff from anywhere and everywhere else. Another few knowledge docs that would actually be important is maybe any sort of like context, let's say, of your organization, of your audience, things like that. You can put those into pretty much like any GPT in which it makes agent in which it makes sense, just to give it even more context. But you don't necessarily have to do that. It just might be helpful for your stakeholders when they're using it, that they don't have to explain the context of the organization like every single time. So that's kind of how I really think that we can utilize AI in like a positive and intentional way, is really by using it, one, for us to offload tasks where we know, what good looks like. So you could put in some information here and build out a research plan much more quickly, and just copy and paste it over and tweak what you need to tweak, rather than having to like create it completely from scratch. But I do recommend every once in a while creating things from scratch, because it reminds us how to do it and we want to be able to think. Or you could use this, you could upload one and say, what perspectives am I missing, for instance, and have the GPT kind of brainstorm with you to see if there's anything that you're missing. And again, the second way is in like that coaching and training. We're not always around to coach, we're not always around to review. So if your stakeholders are utilizing this kind of GPT agent to create research plans, they're getting prompted to actually think through things that we would prompt them to think through. So I do highly recommend that too. I think that it's like a really interesting way to engage with your stakeholders, and also like not become any sort of bottleneck of, we need to review this first. I mean, we should still probably review things, but it at least gives them a platform to play around with these things and come to you with something more like fully thought out and prompted and questioned, rather than just like this request of please validate this like idea and figure out pricing. So I hope that was helpful, just kind of like an insight and thought into how to utilize this a little bit more, and how to, it can be so hard to know how to utilize this in our day-to-day. So hopefully this is helpful in showcasing a way to really do this that's like intentional and thoughtful, and beyond just your day-to-day work, but also helping with that democratization and guardrails piece. And you can create, and I really do recommend making your GPT agents or any sort of agents as specific as possible. So even, as I said, one step further here, user research plans for generative research, user research plans for evaluative research, and you can do I have one on guides, interview guides for generative research, interview guides for usability testing. I have interview guides for concept testing, and it's that same setup with these instructions as well as the knowledge base and taking away that web search. That is very, very important. So yeah, I hope that was helpful and just showcasing a little bit of behind the scenes. Please let me know if you have any like questions or thoughts on this, and if I can do any sort of follow-up to make this a little bit more, clear or helpful. But this is kind of how I think about us becoming more strategic in that AI space. But yeah, thank you so much, and I will talk to you soon.